Every technological era has its obsolete format. The turntable never played the 8-track. The cassette never fit into the CD player. The DVD did not become streaming by force of optimism. When the format changed, the older system either adapted or revealed its limits. Artificial intelligence is doing the same thing now. Not because AI is magic, not because AI is innocent, not because the companies building it should be trusted without scrutiny, but because advanced technology has a way of exposing what the existing system was never built to carry. And right now, the exposure is public. On June 13, 2026, Anthropic disabled access to its most advanced models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, after a U.S. government directive restricted access by foreign nationals. The stated concern involved national security and a potential jailbreak risk that could allow the model to help identify software vulnerabilities. Anthropic disputed the scope and urgency of the order, saying the government had provided only verbal, non-specific evidence, and that access to other models was not affected. That would be enough of a story by itself. But the deeper story did not begin today. On June 5, 2025, Anthropic announced Claude Gov, a version of Claude designed for U.S. defense and intelligence agencies. Reporting at the time described it as already deployed within top-tier government agencies, and more permissive than consumer-facing models for national security work. In July 2025, the Pentagon awarded prototype agreements worth up to $200 million each to Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, and xAI. That distinction matters. This was not simply investment in the venture capital sense. It was a public sector contract ceiling for military AI development and deployment. By March 2026, the relationship had already entered open conflict. Reporting on Anthropic's case against the U.S. government described a dispute over whether Anthropic would relax restrictions against use cases involving domestic mass surveillance and lethal autonomous warfare without human oversight. So the timeline is not abstract. Claude Gov was publicly announced on June 5, 2025. The Pentagon contract ceiling followed in July 2025. The newest models were disabled on June 13, 2026. Roughly 1 year from public defense deployment to public interruption. That is not a long cycle for national infrastructure. And this is the part that deserves careful attention. Anthropic was widely understood as the safer frontier AI company. The company built much of its public identity around safety, restraint, constitutional AI, model behavior, and responsible deployment. It also urged stronger independent safety testing for powerful AI systems shortly before this latest shutdown. That is what gives this moment its institutional bite. The safety-branded AI did not first arrive as a broad public service utility. It arrived as national security infrastructure. Not in schools, not in public interest law, not in local food systems, not in housing support, not in healthcare navigation, not in community restoration. The first major public lane was defense and intelligence. And then, after a major government contract and a contested national security deployment path, the system hit the brakes hard enough that the latest models were pulled from public access. This is not a clean story about AI failure. It is a story about systemic drift. The model did not create the security state. The model did not create opaque procurement. The model did not create institutional secrecy. The model did not create the appetite for surveillance, strategic advantage, autonomous targeting, or control. It entered those environments. Then those environments became visible. That distinction matters because AI is already becoming the scapegoat for failures that were present before the model arrived. When New York City's My City chatbot gave business owners inaccurate and potentially illegal advice, the headline could have been, AI hallucinated. But the deeper failure was that a city placed a probabilistic system in a legally consequential public service role while presenting it as trusted information before the surrounding verification structure was mature enough to carry that authority. When McDonald's ended its IBM AI drive-thru test after order accuracy and interpretation problems became public, the lesson was not that voice AI can never work. The lesson was that noisy, high-speed, low-margin operational environments punish brittle automation and weak exception handling. When tenant screening algorithms were challenged over discriminatory outcomes, the algorithm did not invent housing inequality. It operationalized patterns the housing system had already been willing to tolerate. When health insurers face lawsuits and public scrutiny over alleged algorithmic denial systems, the machine did not invent the incentive to deny, delay, standardize, and minimize care. It accelerated a logic that was already embedded in the system. That is artificial accountability. The institution deploys the tool. The tool exposes the condition. The public blames the tool. The institution remains structurally unchanged. This is how systemic drift survives. It hides inside procurement language. It hides inside pilot programs. It hides inside innovation. It hides inside efficiency claims. It hides inside safety branding. It hides inside the idea that a new technology can be placed into an old system without forcing a reckoning with the old system's incentives. But frontier AI is not an 8-track. It will not behave like a cassette. It cannot be shoved into the CD player and called modernization. A new format requires a new environment. That is the missing layer in nearly every public AI failure. The failure is not always the model. The failure is the interface between capability and environment. Who has authority? What is being optimized? What counts as harm? Who verifies the output? Who can appeal? Who is accountable when the system acts? What happens when the tool exposes an institutional truth no one wants recorded? Those are not technical footnotes. Those are governance conditions. And right now, too many institutions are trying to purchase intelligence without preparing the environment intelligence enters. That is why the Anthropic moment matters. Not because Anthropic is uniquely reckless, not because the US government is uniquely surprised by its own appetite for strategic technology, not because Fable and Mythos are uniquely dangerous in isolation. It matters because the story compresses the entire AI era into one visible contradiction. The safer AI company built for the security state. The security state demanded fewer restraints. The company resisted some uses. The government invoked national security. The newest models went dark. Fables and myths, indeed. The fable is that safety branding can substitute for structural accountability. The myth is that advanced technology can stabilize an incoherent system by being inserted into it. It cannot. Technology does not create institutional integrity. It reveals whether institutional integrity exists. And when it does not, AI will continue to surface the truth in public. In city services, in fast food, in housing, in healthcare, in legal systems, in military procurement, and anywhere else organizations confuse automation with coherence. AI should be held accountable for what it does badly, but it should not be used to conceal what institutions were already doing badly without witnesses. The next era will not be decided only by who has the most powerful model. It will be decided by who has an environment coherent enough to govern what that model exposes. Structural drift is detectable. Collapse is not the default. That is why Measures Registry exists. Not to sell another AI tool, not to defend the institutions deploying them, not to blame the technology for every institutional failure now being revealed in public. Measures Registry was built to identify the condition underneath these failures: structural drift. When powerful technology enters incoherent environments, it does not automatically create stability. It exposes the absence of it. That exposure is now becoming impossible to ignore. Measures Registry begins where the excuse ends. Before an institution scales AI, automates decisions, expands operational dependency, or claims readiness, it should understand the environment the technology is entering. Where is AI already operating? Who holds authority? What guardrails exist? What processes are fragmented? What automation is exposed? Where has leadership visibility separated from runtime behavior? That is the work. Measures Registry provides an assessment-first pathway for identifying structural drift before it becomes institutional failure. AI is not the scapegoat. The system has to be measured. Begin the Measures AI operational evaluation. measuresregistry.com. But artificial accountability will not save systems that refuse to see themselves.